Hi, my name is Steve Stein from Lessonface.com, and this month what I'd like to do is help you to create more realistic sounding solos by helping you organize your thoughts and the abilities that you've already got. And I want to do this by helping you create a chart or an outline of some of the essentials of guitar soloing to help you achieve better success in your overall playing. A lot of times it's easy to get confused with all the amounts of information that we've got out there. So what I want to do is I want you to just start kind of thinking organized-wise of how you're going to approach your solos. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to review our fundamental concepts, which we've done before, but I want to make sure that you really understand where we're at right now in the years passing, all the things that we've talked about. So the first thing I want you to think about is visualization, right? The word I use a lot with my students is absolution. When you look at your fretboard or you think about a concept or whatever it might be, do you really understand that concept? Or can you really execute that lick or that pattern or that phrase at that particular tempo? These are things that we have to be honest with ourselves about to truly achieve that higher level with our playing. And so the first thing I want you to think about is the visualization aspect, okay? When you look down at your fretboard, do you really see the chord options? Do you really see all of the caged options that we've talked about? Do you see all the scales and the various shapes of things that you're trying to study? Now at this point, we've done pentatonics, we've done pentatonic expansions. We haven't done modes, but we're going to start that real soon. We're going to start talking about what modes are. But for now, how much of those things can you really see on your fretboard? And you need to start dealing with the realism of that. If there are holes in your learning or your visualization, you need to address those because we can't use what we don't understand. The next grouping is what I call the understanding grouping, which really would be the theory grouping. But the truth is there's a lot of things that we can do on the guitar that don't revolve around traditional music theory. It is important for us to understand elements of music theory, and I firmly believe that without limitations, obviously we can achieve more and more success. So if theory is something that you're really interested in, you should study it as far as you want to, but you still need to remember that the main goal with theory is to apply it conceptually to the things that you're doing on the guitar. So some logical theory. Notes on the guitar, right? What are the notes on your guitar? When you play a pentatonic scale, what are the notes that you're playing? How do those notes correlate with the chords that are being played? What key are you in? All those sorts of things. That is logical theory. Then we also have visual understanding. Like for years when I played, before I really understood anything about theory, I knew by repetition of learning other people's material that certain chords went with other chords, or I knew what the pentatonic scale was, but I had no idea what the pentatonic scale was. Don't underestimate the importance of those elements because if everything went by the book, we wouldn't have players like Eddie Van Halen or Dimebag Darrell or whoever it might be. A lot of those things come from the shape concepts that we learn by simply looking at the fretboard. So that's the second category I want you to really think about. All right, then we move into category 3, and this is the tricky category. This is the technical category. And, you hear these ever-long battles between speed playing and not speed playing and, how fast and don't play fast. And my goal isn't to sell you on whether or not you want to be fast or don't want to be fast or just want to be intermediate. It doesn't make any difference. The goal with all musical abilities on this instrument is to balance them. So if you do something, that's faster, you balance it with something that isn't so fast. If you do something that's non-melodic, then you try and balance that with something that is melodic. So really my whole take on technique in general is that you don't want to be limited in your ability. Obviously, the more technical ability you have, the more options and opportunities you have to create new things that you come across. You think about the Guitar World website itself. There are tons of great licks and great patterns and phrases and all kinds of things that you can learn just by going through this website. You don't want to, shut things down just because it's fast and it fits in the fast category or because it's too slow or whatever it might be. So for me, technique simply is trying to avoid limitations as much as possible, trying to be able to utilize your fretboard, utilize your finger movements and your picking abilities and all those sorts of things in the way that fits the rhythm or the jam track or the song or whatever it is that you're playing over without inhibition. That's the goal. So for us, technique started as a meandering idea. If you go back a few months, meandering, we were just trying to get used to being able to move around the fretboard as freely as possible without limitation. You know, that's a technique thing. It doesn't mean you're going to do that every time you solo, but it's a great thing to be able to do to get from point A to point B. And then, of course, as I just said, things like licks and patterns and all those sorts of things, there is a wealth of that information right here on the Guitar World website that you can utilize in your playing, and you should. There's more to soloing, needless to say, than licks, but let's be honest. You need those sorts of things to make your solo sound more interesting. All right, so the new thing I want you to start thinking about is a category I call real musical direction. And basically what we're going to start doing now is we're moving away from the visualization aspects and the technical aspects. We need all of those things. But now we're going to start thinking about the human aspect of playing and what that really means when we solo. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to think about all of these things I'm going to be talking about as sort of essential vocal techniques that you need, not volume techniques. Vocal techniques. You're trying to sing on this instrument. This is our goal right now. So we might have some great, cool licks that we can play, but we still need to add some vocal elements. So let's be honest. Some essential vocal elements that we need: bending, proper, in tune, stylistic, musical smooth bending, half step bends, whole step bends, 3-fret bends, blues bends, even exotic bends. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that you can do with bending, but bending is one of the things, needless to say, that separates us from the piano, right? We have the ability of playing a phrase we can do all kinds of cool things with bends. And so for me, those are qualities that you really need to take into serious consideration. Even though you've done them before, you need to really think about the execution of those things, which kind of goes back to technique as well. But bending is essential. Another one, vibrato. Learning to develop a really smooth vibrato. Could be stylistic. I mean, you can do them fast, you can do them, wide, you can do all kinds of different things with vibrato. You can keep them slow and smooth. But the goal is to utilize those things. Another one, I call this category slurs, which is going to include hammer-ons, pull-offs, trills, sliding forward, sliding backward. There's all kinds of cool things that you can do, but those are vocal qualities and they're essential to our soloing. The next group we've got is what I refer to as phrasing. Now, phrasing is like speaking or singing. We need to start figuring out how long our phrase should be, the way that we talk to each other, okay? We don't want to talk monotone all the time. We need to talk to each other to engage interest. And so phrasing is exactly that. The first thing I want to say about phrasing that's really important is you have to learn how to stop playing. Because a lot of times when people play, they might in their mind, they're thinking about a million different things and they're moving around the fretboard. But in truth, the listener is just hearing a bunch of babble, right? The goal is to actually phrase by stopping. You say something and you stop. Now, you can decide how long or short or whatever you want to do with those, but the concept of actually physically stopping the strings from vibrating is really important, because if you were a singer, you would have to breathe. Well, that's what we want to do when we're soloing as well. Another idea of phrasing that I want you to think about, and you're going to find this with licks and patterns as well, is repetition. It's an essential part of soloing, is repeating ideas, whether it's a melodic idea or whether or not it's just a rhythmic idea. If I'm going, it's going to catch the listener's ear because it's something that's happening over and over and over. If I'm going, right? I'm using the same concept over and over and over. The rhythm might be changing a little bit, but I'm using the same idea, and it can be ear-catching, which is something that we need in our phrases. Another idea that we can use with phrasing is intervallic ideas, right? So instead of just playing up the scale and down the scale, and I'm just staying A minor pentatonic here. What we want to learn how to do is intervallically move over things. So instead of, for instance, just moving up and down, maybe you start learning how to move over kind of like maybe Lincoln Brewster or Eric Johnson or players like that you really use this idea of being able to jump over the top of things to create intervals, larger distances between the notes. There's a lot of really neat things like that you can come up with that can be very creative and very fun for you as a player, and certainly very interesting for your listener. The next category, or the next segment, is going to be called note chasing or chord chasing, and this is where last time we were talking about the cage system. This is where we start really trying to implement the concept of melody, whether your melody is coming from theory that you understand or it's just coming from visual shapes on your fretboard. If there's an A minor chord being played in the rhythm section, you would want to acknowledge that by emphasizing something to do with the A minor chord. It might just be the A, right? But it could be other things. It might be the C or the E. It might be other things too, but acknowledging those. So if your chord progression is moving from A minor to G, you, once in a while in your playing, I'm not saying that you have to do it every time, but you do need to acknowledge those chord changes to a certain degree by emphasizing notes that correlate with those chords. And again, if you think about it from a singer's perspective, that's exactly what you're doing. Singers don't just sing a bunch of notes and move all over the place. They hear a chord and they try and sing something that's relative to that chord that's being played. So note chasing is very important. And again, you can always go back to my video on Caged and start exploring there. That's a great place to begin. Another group that I'd like you to think about in this realistic musical direction is dynamic contrast. And what I mean by that is trying to shake things up. If you play loud, play quiet. If you play high, play low. If you play fast, play slow. If you play a lot, play a little, or stop playing like we talked about earlier. Try and break things up so everything isn't boxy. You just go up and then you go back down, or you go this way and then you go this way. And everything's the same length and everything's the same, volume. The volume knob on a guitar and the toggle switch on the guitar are two incredibly useful things that a lot of players never even conceive doing. They just turn their distortion all the way up and then just go at it. And again, don't get me wrong, sometimes that's the perfect thing to do. But it's not always the perfect thing to do. So it kind of depends on what you're doing. But just be aware that those things are available to you to create some good dynamic contrast. And the final grouping that I've got under this real musical direction, is the guitar effect concepts. Now, this is an endless idea, but think about it this way. Things like string skipping or tapping or double stops or unison bends, or tremolo picking, or open string ideas, anything where you hear somebody, arpeggios, all kinds of different things. Any conceptual idea of how to move around the guitar that isn't just a lick or a pattern, which we know we need those too. You want to be aware of those. And so what I do is I teach people how to take all of these things that I've just explained to you and organize them like on a piece of paper, or on a board in front of you. You've got all of these different ideas, and it might seem anal to some people, but the truth is it's really nice because you can see all of these different topics. If you don't think of string skipping, you might not do it. If you don't think of double stops or unison bends, you might not do those. So it's nice to chart things out once in a while and have everything kind of laid out in front of you, so you can go, okay, well, I should be thinking about slowing down. I should think about being quieter. I should think about, now I should, lop somebody's head off with something really aggressive. There's all kinds of different ways that you could go with that. So even though sometimes it might seem like, well, I don't want to get out a piece of paper, it seems like school, and if I do that, it can be very beneficial for your learning. So in closing, what I want you to think about is, above everything, okay, I want you to learn how to listen to the rhythm section of whatever it is you're going to solo over, and learn how to complement it. The job of the guitar player isn't just to solo as much as possible and play every note of a scale and every lick that we possibly know. It's to complement the musical idea that's happening at that moment. Sometimes it is aggressive and it is fast. Sometimes it's not. But the goal is to truly learn how to listen to the music. And I know that seems silly, but for years in my playing, I can honestly say that I was just running route. I was just doing the things that I'd learned how to do on the guitar, and I was never really responding on a musical level to the things that I was actually listening to. And it was pretty great when I first started learning how to do that, where instead of just doing things, I started listening to the music and trying to respond more regarding what the music was in need of, instead of just what I knew how to do and then force that over the top of it. So, there's a lot of talking in this month, but I really want you to think about these things because they can be pretty life-changing if you just start trying to organize. It's amazing how much people actually know, but they're always focusing on everything that they cannot do versus trying to figure out what they really can do and then organize their plan of attack, just like you would in any other job, any other venture that you're on. And so think about those things a little bit, and then what's going to happen is next month I'm going to implement the modal idea to give you another place to go to start escalating your musical abilities and your soloing as well. So have a great month, and I'll speak to you soon.